next on 5. More on our exclusive interview with Robert Blackmon, a passenger in the car Michael Moore drove when a police officer pulled him over and shot him to death. Mobile police also watched our interview, not only paying attention to what Blackmon had to say, but how he said it. Tonight, News 5's Alan Carter has their response in another story you'll see only on News 5.
Robert Blackmon gave us the closest account of what happened during the shooting of Mike Moore.
He went from get on the ground to pop, 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 pop.
As expected, a lot of people have been dissecting what was said. Just look no further than Facebook.
I don't know what's going on through Mike's mind at the time.
But it's not just the public who are watching, so were police.
There are portions of his account of what occurred that are extremely consistent with the statement that he provided us, and there are portions of it that are inconsistent with what he provided us.
Lawrence Batiste is MPD's assistant chief. He says Blackmon told investigators Moore armed himself before getting out of the car.
I ain't say that. He had the gun on him.
From the perspective of a law enforcement officer, most people, if they're getting ready to have an encounter with law enforcement, would not arm themselves. And so it makes a tremendous difference from the perspective of intent.
But the biggest controversy came from Blackmon's statement that Moore's hands were up.
And he bagged up with his hands up.
Batiste says there may be clues in the way it was said.
When he said that Michael Moore's hands were up.
Where were Mike's hands?
Mike's hands was up.
Body language tells a story, and so he said Michael Moore's hands were up. Were they here? Were they here? Well, if they're here and he makes a sudden movement, that's one thing. If they're here and he makes a sudden movement, that's a whole different dynamic.
And Batiste says those hands are so important to an officer's judgment.
The hands can take the action that can be fatal to the officer. So the hands are probably the most important thing that an officer focuses on when he has an encounter with an individual.
It's not that police don't believe Blackmon, but with many accounts of the incident, it all depends on who saw what. At this point, police feel they're putting the picture together, but there's still a gap in those fateful seconds.
I think that we have put together a pretty solid picture of what occurred up until the point where Michael Moore exited the vehicle. And I think it's at that particular point that we began to have some inconsistencies that will that causes us to have to truly look a little bit harder about what actually occurred.
And the one thing Mobile police did want to stress is that while they are investigating this incident, they themselves will not be making any determination as to whether or not this shooting was justified. This case will still go to a grand jury, but we're still several months out possibly before getting to that point. Reporting live in the newsroom, Alan Carter, News 5.
Thank you, Alan. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is asking for your help in the Michael Moore shooting death. Today, the FBI said it is offering up to $10,000 for a copy of any video that clearly shows the last few minutes of the encounter between Mike Moore and Officer Harold Hurst on June 13th. Visit our website, WKRG.com, for details.